You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is Morley Robbins. He's an author of a book called Cure Your Fatigue. We're going to talk about minerals and root causes and how to attack fatigue essentially at its root. Where does it come from? Why does it happen? All that. Morley is the creator and founder of Root Cause Protocol and the Magnesium Advocacy Group. So welcome, Morley. Thanks for coming.
Delighted to have the opportunity and look forward to our exchange. Thanks so much.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your background and how you got to study and know so much about magnesium and fatigue and all that stuff.
Absolutely. I'll give you the short version. I grew up in a very sickly family that was very allopathically oriented. My sister became a nurse, and I was supposed to become a doctor until I got to college and found out how much work that was. And if you're not going to be a doctor, you go into business to become an executive in a hospital, which is what I chose to do. Because if you can't be one, you're going to boss them around. So I did that for 12 years and working for bigger and more complex organizations along the way. And then decided I wanted to become a consultant and solve bigger problems. So I did that for 20 years. And during those 20 years, I was pulling a suitcase behind my back, at which point my body finally said, we're not going to do this anymore. I developed a frozen shoulder and couldn't pick my hand up above my waist. And I went to a health food store that I'd known for 20-some years, Chicago area. And I said, what do you guys have for a frozen shoulder? And they said, well, you need to go see Dr. Liz. And I put my hands up, said, no. I don't do witchcraft, because I knew doctor and first name was a chiropractor. And I said, give me some supplements. They didn't work. Went back. The owner was there that day that I went back, and she looked me in the eye. She said, Morley, we love you. Go see Dr. Liz. Well, long story short, I put my tail between my legs, went to see Dr. Liz, and she healed my frozen shoulder with a chiropractic adjustment inside my mouth. There's a TMJ joint that you're probably familiar with. There's a little muscle in there called the pterygoid muscle. And that muscle, believe it or not,
I've had that adjusted. It's like a squishy button. And when they press it, it's like some disgusting liquid, kind of like a little bit of it goes down the back of your throat, and it helps. It's just very weird.
Yeah, it controls the shoulder joint. I didn't know. So it's just pressing on that pterygoid muscle. My arm lifts up, and I'm like in the midst of a miracle. And she used a phrase I'd never heard in 32 years of working in a hospital. She talked about an innate healer, the healer within. And I looked at her. I didn't say anything to her at the time. I thought, we've got millions of doctors around the world. Why do we have all these doctors if we have an innate healer? And so I vowed that I was going to discover who is the innate healer, and ended up writing a book about it that you referenced, Cure Your Fatigue. There's brackets around the CU, which is the symbol for copper. And my read of the tea leaves is that this particular mineral is legendary in our body for its ability to make energy, to run critical antioxidant enzymes, to ensure nerve function is proper, signaling pathways. I mean, I could go on for an hour, but it's suppressed knowledge. It's not taught in formal medical education, in part, I think, because it does too much. And so I set out, wrote the book. We released it in 2021. It's done very well enough that the folks at Ben Bella Books decided they wanted to publish a second edition, which will come out November 11th of this year. And very excited about the opportunity to spread this gospel and get more people to realize how important copper is, particularly because of its ability to regulate iron and oxygen, which are the two sources of all the problems we have in our body. That's where all of the oxidative stress comes from. That's where the fatigue comes from. That's where the dysfunction originates, is the dynamic.
You're saying copper now. I thought that's like we only need tiny amounts of it, and sometimes people can have too much. Like what's what's the deal with it? Where do we get it from?
Well, historically, we've gotten it from our diet. We got it from organ meats. We got it from legumes, from seafood. These were very rich sources of copper. In the modern era, we're living with a very different farming system that's working with very sophisticated chemicals. And those chemicals are mineral chelators, and they chelate these minerals at varying speeds. It's actually a logarithmic scale, so that you are familiar with an earthquake of 3 versus an earthquake of 12. 3, dishes rattle. 12, nobody survived because it's orders of magnitude of increase. Well, glyphosate, which is one of the most toxic chemicals on the farm, pulls calcium and magnesium out at a 3, but it's pulling copper out at a 12. So what's that mean? It means it's got an affinity for copper that's 1,000,000,000 times faster than calcium or magnesium. And the problem we have with that kind of scale is we can't really relate because we've never gone 1,000,000,000 times faster. When I drove my mom's Mercedes twice as fast as I should have. Chuck Yeager flew the X-15 10 times faster than what we can drive on the highway, but 1,000,000,000 times faster. And so we are in a situation now where this critical mineral, and you're absolutely right, it doesn't take a lot, but if you don't have it, suddenly there's a metabolic breakdown in the body. The mitochondria don't work right. They can't make energy. They can't recycle iron. And then you're in a world of hurt. And so the meme that runs medicine on the planet is you're anemic and you're copper toxic. And what I've learned over the last 16 years, reading over 10,000 scientific articles, is that meme is back. Turns out we are drowning in iron and we don't have enough copper to spit at in our diet. And that's where I was inspired to develop what's called the root cause protocol, which gets people to change their diet, change their mineral supplementation, and begin to introduce the nutrients that the body was designed to run on from the get-go. And just phenomenal impact that it has in people who are willing to kind of go counterintuitive and countercultural. It's a very...
Well, what does it do if you're low in copper? What symptoms would you present with?
Well, you would present with a lot of symptoms, the most significant of which is fatigue. It's the number one reason why people go see their doctor. If you can't make energy, you will have fatigue. In 1973, famous cardiologist and copper researcher discovered that copper deficiency is what caused cholesterol to rise in the body. And that was a very unpopular thing for him to do, because it was right at the start of the statin making process. But for his findings to become science, one other lab needed to prove he was right. Since then, over 30 labs have documented Buzz-Clemay's finding. And now what are we faced with? Statins are the number one product on the planet, $1 trillion a year, but they're not solving the problem. The problem is lack of copper. Other conditions that you would have, just the plaque buildup, the inflammation, all of the iron-related issues. A lot of people think that they're anemic because they lack iron, when in fact there's reams of science that would prove that it's a lack of copper that prevents iron from moving properly in the body to allow for the normal production of red blood cells. And there are 20,000 conditions that are profiled in the Merck manual. That's the Bible of allopathic medicine. Well, all of those 20,000 conditions start with one event, oxidative stress. And there's a protein in our body that runs on copper. The protein is called ceruloplasmin. You probably have never heard that term. It means sky blue in the blood, and it's a blue protein, but it's the master antioxidant that runs our body. You might have heard of glutathione. It's a very important antioxidant, but that's at a cellular level. And you may have heard of melatonin. That's the master antioxidant inside the mitochondria. But inside our body, it's ceruloplasmin that is keeping us in balance and in homeostasis, but it must have copper in order to be functional. And that's where we're at a significant disadvantage as a society now.
Will the blood test reveal copper deficiency, or how do people find out?
Yeah, so we've developed what's called the Full Monty Iron Panel, and it's traditional tests that have been cobbled together. But we're looking at iron biomarkers, we're looking at copper biomarkers, zinc, vitamin A, vitamin D, and what's important is that there's a ratio for the relationship between this ceruloplasmin protein and serum copper. And the closer that ratio is to 3.33, the healthier the person is likely going to be. And that ratio was developed by two world-renowned hematologists from Harvard Medical School back in 1960. The research has been done, Richard. It's just that it's just not been taught. And what most people don't know is that in medical schools, there's a Chinese wall between the labs and the classroom. And the the findings in the labs don't always make it into the classroom.
It's the same institution.
At the same institution. Absolutely.
That means that a centralized body provides the curriculum and authorizes it, most likely.
That's exactly right. That's very true.
Who is that in the medical field?
I would imagine it's a cartel of sorts. It would be the AMA, Big Pharma. It's a number of chemical companies. There's a lot of money to be made in having people still alive, but not fully functional. And the adage is there's no money in a dead person. And so when you look at the rate of increase of disease, of chronic disease, just in our country alone, over the last 100 years, it's staggering what's happened. And I was born in 1952. There was no autism in my class, in my school, in my grade. And now it's 1 in 33. And in California, it's 1 in 12. And so...
Really? Is that much of a difference in California?
Yep. And so people don't realize, we're basically boiling a frog 1 degree at a time. And over the course of a century, there have been radical changes made in farming, radical changes made in food processing, and radical changes made in pharmaceutical. And when you begin to integrate all of those changes, it begins to change our availability to key nutrients, and we begin to lose our metabolic integrity. We can't, we don't have the same vitality that our ancestors had. And I'll give you a very graphic example of it. My grandfather was born in 1879. So he was 72 years old when I was born. And I have a very vivid memory. When I was 20 years old, I was in college. I'd come home and he needed some help weeding the hill of his property. Now, mind you, he's 92 years old. I'm 20 years old, and he's working like a machine, and I'm getting tired. And so I've seen that play out time and time again with other clients that I've worked with when they reflect back on their ancestors, parents, grandparents, they might have known their great-grandparents. And people don't realize how much the food system has changed in the course of our lifetime. And of course, that's certainly what a lot of the fight is in Washington right now with Secretary Kennedy. He's trying to take on the moneyed interests that have created a very different type of food system than what our ancestors grew up with.
Yeah, that's crazy. What's up? In addition to copper, it says in your bio that you have tons of experience with magnesium. We talk about that and layer that in a bit. I heard most people are magnesium deficient as well. So what does that do?
Yeah, no, it's really where I cut my teeth. When I got into this, when I decided to become what I call the thinking man's nutritionist, I started doing some writing. And one of Dr. Liz's clients challenged me to write about heart disease. I said, okay. She said, but I want you to use paradoxical intent. I said, what is that? She said, reverse psychology. I said, okay. So I developed what was called a 10-step plan to make a heart attack. And what was really entertaining about it was 7 of the 10 steps I learned from the American Heart Association, telling you to do these 7 things, that it was going to prevent a heart attack. And I was able to prove that in the research, it was going to cause a heart attack. Yeah, no, it was uncanny. And step number 8 was remove magnesium from your diet. And this particular individual said, well, I can't help but think that this magnesium thing is more important than you realize. I said, maybe you're right. This is back in 2010. And I got Carolyn Dean's book, The Magnesium Miracle, and was fascinated by what she was talking about. And after having spent 30 plus years in the hospital industry, I came to the same conclusion. We're all magnesium deficient. And I thought, all we got to do is, restore magnesium, everything's fine. And I remember early on in that process, a practitioner approached me at a conference. He said, Morley, I'm really impressed with your findings. But he said, if it was as simple as just magnesium, we would have figured that out. And in my arrogance, I said, well, maybe you don't understand it the way I did. I do. And turns out, again, long story short, he was right. I was wrong. And over the course of about 5 to 7 years, I pieced together what causes the magnesium deficiency. That if we don't have proper levels of copper in our diet, iron is going to build up in our body. It's axiomatic.
Some comes to mind from it. I'm sorry to bother you, but I went to my doctor a year ago, now 15. He's like, your iron's very high. I suggest you donate blood 3 or 4 times this year to reduce your iron levels, because he said high iron leads to cardiovascular problems.
That's right.
So I wonder, how does that fit in? It just came to mind. I'm sorry to...
No. Let me finish the logic trail, and I'll come back to your situation, because it's outstanding that you understand the problem. So iron will build a very good rule of thumb. This would be for anyone listening to this conversation. Take your age and multiply it times 365, and that'll tell you how many milligrams of iron you have in your body. Now, I'm 72 times 365. I've got 26,000 milligrams of iron, and men are designed for 5,000 and women are designed for 4,000. So you can do the math on your side. And as that iron rises in your body, as we get older, we are accumulating iron. Well, that iron reacts with the oxygen, and that causes oxidative stress. And if you don't have copper in your diet, as the vast majority of people don't, there's no mechanism to neutralize that oxidative stress. And when there is rising oxidative stress, who takes it on the chin? It's magnesium. There are enzymes in our body called kinase enzymes, and they're basically responding to stress, heat stress, oxidative stress, what have you. And the way they're designed, they have magnesium in them, but when they cleave off phosphate to try to respond to the stress, the magnesium goes right into our urine. So that's the metabolic origin of magnesium deficiency. It isn't just that we don't have it in our diet, it's that we're constantly losing it in the course of our daily life. Back to your situation with elevations of iron, do you recall, Richard, what the blood marker that the doctor was responding to? Was it hemoglobin? Was it ferritin? Or was it
ferritin?
do you remember what the number was? Do you have any recall on that?
No, I don't remember what it was. I think there's two ways I remember measuring it, but I don't remember what it was.
Okay. Well, for me, the wake-up call for me was in December of 2015. Dr. Liz was asked, she says, you keep telling people that they need to do a blood test. So have you done a blood test for yourself? I went, no, that's a great idea. So I went and did a blood test only to find out that my hemoglobin was 18.3 and the cutoff for donations is 18.5. And my ferritin was 237. Now it's a very healthy and predictable 35, which is somewhere between 20 and 50 is considered good. But when you start to get over 200, especially for a guy, that's a problematic level, but it can go into the thousands. So the fact that your doctor recognized that your ferritin was elevated, that's a great thing because a lot of doctors are not trained in that awareness. And so the fastest thing that people can do to improve their health is do a blood donate. And they'll donate 500 milliliters of blood, which on average has about 250 milligrams of iron in it. About half of the content of that bag of blood is iron. And so your doctor knew about the iron side. What he doesn't know about is the amazing research, again, back to Leslie Clavet, who's still living. He's 91 years old, living in the Dakotas. And the year 2000, he compiled and was able to document and verify that there's 80 anatomical, chemical, and physiological defects in a copper-deficient heart. One of those defects is iron accumulation in the heart. And what your doctor was keying off of is your ferritin's up. It means you're not regulating iron properly. The part that he doesn't know about is the copper side. Copper is the general and iron is the foot soldier. And you don't need to be in the military to know there's a difference between generals and foot soldiers. But if you want a real graphic example, think about General Pat moving all the tanks during the Second World War. He had hundreds of tanks at his disposal. And what are they made of? Iron. And he was really good at it.
Wasn't one general called Old Ironsides? Maybe it was a ship.
Well, there was a ship called Old Ironsides. But
that's probably what I'm thinking.
But there's a Confederate general named General Burnside. And that's where sideburns came from. But but the thing is, people don't realize how central copper is to our well-being, how important it is to our mitochondria. People might remember from their high school biology class the textbook that had a picture of the cell, and in that picture, there might have been 2 or 3 mitochondria. And what they don't know is that picture was drawn by Walt Disney, has nothing to do with reality. And so the average cell has 500 mitochondria. The average liver cell has 2,000 mitochondria. The average heart cell has 10,000 mitochondria. The average mature egg in a woman's body, 600,000 mitochondria. And there's nerve cells in our brain that have as many as 2 million mitochondria. And why is this important? Because a very famous copper researcher named Paul Cobain at Auburn University in 2004 and 2006 discovered that there's 50,000 atoms of copper in the center of each mitochondria. Who's talking about that? Nobody. And everyone loves to talk about mitochondrial dysfunction or metabolic dysfunction, but not get down to the granular mineral level to find out, do we have enough copper in there? And then the mitochondria is always called a powerhouse. It's not a powerhouse. It's a smithy. The main job of the mitochondria is to recycle iron. The iron is coming in with oxygen. And what does the mitochondria do? It turns that oxygen into water. How does it do that? There's an enzyme that's run by copper to do that so that we can release ATP into our body. And we make our body weight in ATP every day. It's a lot That's a lot of ATP. Well, you can't make that ATP if you don't have copper. And when people say they are fatigued, it means they're not making enough ATP, which means they don't have enough copper. And if the copper's not right in the mitochondria, Rich, then the iron is not being recycled properly. And when the iron starts to build up in the mitochondria, then you start to create the chaos that we call chronic disease. That's the long and the short of the research that I've done over the last 16 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's a very different model than this draconian, oh, I have cancer, or I have heart disease. There is no disease. It's just metabolic dysfunction.
So what happens when someone has no copper? How do they produce any ATP?
Well, we actually get a download of copper from our mom when we're in the womb, in the last trimester of the pregnancy. You and I, if we're both healthy and balanced, we would have about 100 milligrams of copper in our body. And that 100 milligrams would fit on the head of a 1-inch stick pin. It's not a lot, like you said at the very beginning. It doesn't take much. We get 70 milligrams of copper from our mom at birth, ideally. In the modern era, I don't think that's happening. And this is not just humans. This is all mammals have this ability, this natural ability to download copper and downloads iron at a slightly higher rate. But where we get 70 milligrams of copper, the mom would download about 350 milligrams of iron, so about 5 times more. But what happens is, as we get older and those milligrams of iron are accumulating in our body, the ratio starts to go from 5 to 1 at birth to, if I'm doing my calculations right, 26,000 and I've got 100 milligrams. So I'm at what, 260 to 1? It's a very different number when you get up to that level. And so it's the scale of the imbalance between copper and iron. And most people will have copper in their body, assuming they don't have any kind of genetic defects. But we have this food system now that is fortified with iron. We have supplements that all have iron in them. And we are surrounded by iron in our daily diet. And people are not realizing that the reason why they have iron issues is they don't have adequate levels of the copper general to manage that footprint of iron in their body.
Is this why, I don't know, I guess Indian culture, sometimes they use like copper old water, or they wear a copper bracelet. Was that do anything, or you have to ingest?
No, ideally you should get it through your diet, but culturally, like India was very, and still does, use copper vessels. It's more of an antimicrobial action than a supplementation. I mean, there's microscopic amounts of copper that are going to get into the water, but it's really it was the original antimicrobe on the planet long before people realized that silver would do that. And I would say that copper is superior to silver in that regard. But it's been used, it was first discovered thousands of years ago, but it was used medicinally as far back as several thousand years ago. But Hippocrates used copper in his practice in Greece back in the day. So a lot of that changed during the First World War, and there was a wholesale flip of the paradigm, and then copper was out of favor, and they started focusing on other medicinal approaches to addressing people's problems.
So where can people get copper today? In a supplement form or certain foods? What's the best way?
I think the food system is really compromised. I know a lot of people still rely on organ mates, particularly grass-fed liver, or oysters would be another rich source of copper historically. I think that the changes in our farming environment are such that we have to...
This brings one more memory back. I love seafood, and in particular oysters. When I would have raw oysters, I felt more awake. After I would eat them, I felt like a sense of relief and relaxation and more awake. I just thought it's like, I don't know. My daughter's the same way. It's weird. I just love them, and I just like, I feel better when I have them.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will text you the link for the blood test that we do. I have no control over the cost. It's about $275. But if you decide to do that blood test, I'll be happy to interpret it pro bono and let you know where the mismatch is between copper and iron in your body and why you responded so positively to the oyster, because you were firing up your mitochondria. You were getting rid of ammonia in your system. And so you had greater clarity of thought. And again, all of that's a benefit of bioavailable copper. And so, yes, you can get copper in supplements. And what during COVID, I read in what COVID stands for. COV stands for copper's vanished, and ID stands for iron's dysregulated. And if we had more time, I'd take you into the rationale for that. But I realized as things were unfolding in 2020 and 2021 that we needed a much more robust copper supplement. So I developed one called Recuperate, and it has desiccated beef liver, spirulina, It has turmeric, but it also has 2 milligrams of copper bisglycinate to make sure that people are getting a healthy dose of copper each and every day.
How do you know if you're having too much?
Well, a lot of people want to blame the symptoms of taking copper on either their headaches or the feeling of anxious or nausea in the stomach. What I would offer up is that what copper does, it has a very powerful effect on iron, and it mobilizes iron that's stuck in the tissue. People don't realize how much iron they have stuck in their stomach, in their brain, in their heart, in their pancreas, what have you, in their intestines.
Will people smell funny where their sweat actually look different, like a rust color or anything, or they won't notice?
The rust color would be more likely if they didn't have copper than if they did. And what the copper does is it mobilizes the iron. And what practitioners do is blame the copper for the impact that the mobilized iron has in the body. Iron is not our friend. We can't live without iron. That's a given. But iron is not exactly our friend. It's a Janus molecule. It's two-faced. It delivers the oxygen that we can't live without. It provides the heme and the iron sulfur clusters that are so important for our body. But in its unbound form, if it's not being regulated properly, it is highly toxic, and it's at the basis of all chronic disease. And that's, again, this is not my opinion. It's what the research reveals when you get into the real sophisticated research coming out of India, Italy, Australia, some very sophisticated Iceland. Some very sophisticated research has been done over the years, not always coming out of the United States, given the penchant for trying to sell drugs in the U.S.
Okay, well, very good. For people listening, what's the best way they can learn more and then figure out how to take action? Where should they go?
So we encourage people to go to the Root Cause Protocol website, rcp123.org. We have a very robust community, the RCP community they can join. We have an online institute where people can take a 16-week course to learn how copper and iron really work in the body. We are on all the social media platforms, and people are certainly welcome to reach out to me personally. My email address is morleyrobbins@gmail.com. And I always give out my phone number as well. It's 847-922-8061. I get 3 to 5 calls a week from people all over the world asking questions, expressing gratitude for the Root Cause Protocol. And I'm happy to have those conversations going forward.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to ask you is, what research are you doing now? Because I don't imagine you'll ever, just give up and sit there. You sound like you're always busy. What are you doing now?
I'm really, I'm focusing on the role of nitric oxide as it relates to the copper-iron dynamic. And the other is really trying to really understand the turnover of ferritin in the body, what really regulates that, and then better understand something called ferroptosis. People probably have heard of apoptosis or necrosis. Those are programmed cell death functions, but there's one that's directed by iron called ferroptosis, and I'm really trying to get on top of that. So I have a real working knowledge of some of the nuance of how iron disrupts our cellular dynamics.
Okay, very good. Well, Morley, thank you so much for making the time to come on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to follow up with you, and I hope the listeners that are experiencing fatigue and other issues will do the same. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity, and thank you again for your flexibility.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.